Welcome to this live stream meditation and Dharma talk. My name is Jonathan Foust. Delighted to have this time with you. I'm used to at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington, where I teach on Monday nights. I'm really gotten used to seeing people beforehand and looking out and making contact is just helpful for when I'm going to guide meditation and lead a talk. So I'm just imagining you right now in your PJs, just sitting back and waiting and here for this meditation, this talk. And I want to warn you as well that you may hear a strange sound, which will be the sound of a medium-sized dog hurling herself at the door to my office. A few announcements before we begin. Just a reminder that we have the entire Monday night extravaganza available online. Before this talk at 6:30 to 7:20, there's mindful movement guided by our great teachers. And after this class at 8:50, a mindful dialogue being led by Ray Manioki and Tara Cassidy. You can check those links on my Facebook page to get all set up for that. If you'd like to be on my mailing list, you can sign up on my website at www.jonathanfoust.com. A reminder as well that all my talks are available online and on my podcast. And a big thank you to the Insight Meditation of Community of Washington, and specifically to Glenn and Leo in particular for being the jockeys that help this live stream go out to Facebook and to YouTube and now through the IMCW website as well. Also, before we launch in here, I'd like to thank you for your donations. They make a big difference. They can support IMCW at imcw.org. Anything you'd like to do to support the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington, which hosts our class. And for me and my lavish lifestyle, that's available through my website, through PayPal at jonathanfoust@mac.com. So it's great to have this time with you. We're going to start with a meditation, primarily focusing on calming and collecting, and then opening up into observing and allowing, and some time at the end for resting in presence. So if you'd like, you want to make sure your phone is set on stun, that you won't be disturbed for the next 25 minutes. It's also helpful just to find a posture where you will be as comfortable as you can while at the same time remaining alert. So best to have your spine upright as best as you can. And it's also helpful just to help to prepare the body a little bit. So if you like, you might want to reach your arms up overhead. Just stretch up through the left side and up through the right side, alternating from side to side. You can draw your navel in toward your spine, lift up out of the waist. If you like, you can lift your chin up toward the ceiling a little bit, open your jaw wide, let out any sounds. And we're going to move into my favorite technique for calming, and that is to let your hands just slide right down so your palms are facing you. When you're ready, you can close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, let all of your attention flow into your hands. And feel the palms, feel the fingers and thumbs, feel the backs of the hands. And now relax your thumbs. Relax your fingers. We're going to move into an exercise that is helpful for cultivating a sense of not just concentration, but also a practice of absorption. The anchor or the focus of your attention is the feeling in the hands. And you might just sense now, can you feel any sense of pulse or tingling or subtle energy or vibration? Can you feel or imagine the space between your fingers? And as you're ready, imagine that if someone was observing you, they could barely perceive motion as you begin to lower your hands down toward your lap. If someone was watching you, they could barely perceive movement and feel the micro movements of the hands as they flow through space. If your mind comes in with commentary, just guide your attention back. Feel the micro movements of the hands as they flow through space, the aliveness in the palms and fingers and thumbs, the sense of meditation in motion. Notice the effect on the mind. And wherever you find your hands, whether they're still in transit or whether they've come to rest, continue just simply to relax and feel the sense of aliveness here in the palms, the texture of the air touching the skin, any sense of pulse or vibration or tingling, aliveness. And take some time now to relax and to feel. Notice the sounds around you right now. And feel the temperature, the texture, the humidity of the air touching your skin. Where do you feel the breath the most predominant on the inside right now? Deepening this sense of embodied awareness, you might now feel the crown of the head. Can you feel your forehead smooth? Feel the inside of your mouth. And sense it now if you can relax your tongue in a way that it fills your lower jaw. Is it possible to relax the root of your tongue down into your throat while you simultaneously soften the whole mechanism of the jaw? Let the jaw hang from the skull. And sensing all the muscles of the face, is it possible to let all expression melt away from your face now? And feel the back of the head and the base of the skull. And the back of the neck and the tops of your shoulders. And feeling now the weight of the shoulders and the weight and the heaviness and the length of your arms as you sense down through the elbows and down through the wrists. As you again revisit the felt sense of the hands and palms and fingers, take some time here to relax and feel. And can you feel or imagine the space inside your throat? The space inside your lungs as you breathe? And sensing the lower back and the buttocks, and the belly and the lower abdomen. Feeling the floor of the pelvis and the hip joints. And sensing now down the length of the legs, down through the knees, the backs of the knees and the kneecaps, down through the ankles, the tops of the feet and the toes, the soles of the feet and the heels. And you might inquire, what could relax or soften right now? Sensing this paradoxical blend of deep relaxation while at the same time the mind alert. And guiding your attention now to the sense of the breath. Where do you feel the breath on the inside right now? And you might direct your attention now to an anchor or a focal point. It may be the breath, the sense of the breath where you feel it the most predominant, or you might narrow the breath to the region of the nostrils or the septum, or perhaps the belly. But the breath is effortless and free flowing. Your attention is at the experience on the inside, the length of the inhalation, the pause, the breath out, and that moment of stillness. If you like, you might use the sounds, the real time sound vibrations as your anchor. Or if you like, you might use this feeling in the palms and fingers and thumbs. Whatever anchor you choose for this next period of time, let this be your primary form of focus or concentration, the direct experience of here and now. When you wake up lost in a thought form or commentary, take your time to begin again. You might again just sense through the body and sense what could relax or soften right now. And from a place of relaxation, guide your attention back to your anchor. Where do you feel this breath on the inside? Awake to the sounds as they're happening, or to this feeling tone, the felt sense of your hands. And as you continue to relax and to re-arrive, to explore the sense of receiving the moment directly through the felt sense of the body, you might become more aware of foreground and background, that the anchor of breath or sound or feeling is in the foreground. And yet, as you relax and widen your awareness, you may be more aware of everything that is changing in the background. And if it feels right for you, you might relax your concentration a bit, open and widen, broaden your attention to the perception of all that is changing, the sense of the stream of sensation and feeling, the flow of thoughts, moods, even different states come and go. And you might sense what it is like to be the open monitor of what is changing in your experience, and to sense what it means to let it be just as it is. When the mind naturally gets lost, bring yourself back again to the anchor. Establish a sense of here and now presence. And then again, you might broaden and widen your awareness. Awake to all that is changing and sensing what it means to let it be. From time to time, you might explore two elemental questions. The first question, what is happening right now? And can you name the qualities of this moment in a word or two? The second question, can I let it be? In these remaining 5 minutes or so, you might refresh the practice. Again, inquiring what could relax, what could soften, and feel the forehead smooth. Relax the tongue and feel the inside of the mouth. And relax and feel the shoulders and arms, and the backs of the hands, the palms, thumbs, and fingers, and the lower back and the buttocks, and the belly and lower abdomen, and sensing down through the floor of the pelvis. And feel the weight of the legs, and feeling the soles of the feet and the heels. Arriving again at your anchor of breath or sound or feeling. How intimately can you feel it right now? You might widen your awareness to this perception of all that is changing and your capacity to let it be as it is. And if it feels right for you in these remaining minutes, you might release all technique. Just relax and feel. Deeply relaxed, at the same time alert. Allowing open and spacious. And what could relax or soften or let go right now? What could relax or soften or let go even more than that? Now releasing all technique. Just relax and feel. And noting and feeling the quality of presence, whatever that may mean for you. And sense what has shifted. You might now very gently begin to lengthen and deepen your breath. And notice where you feel the breath on the inside. And with your eyes closed, you might let your head drift a little bit to the left and to the right. Just feel the movement from the inside. And from here, let your body begin to move and shift. Take the next period of time for your transition. Feel free to stretch and move in any way that feels good for you. Or if you like, you can just simply relax. Welcome back. If you like, once again, you might want to reach your arms up overhead. Stretch up in any way that feels good for you. Lift your chin up toward the ceiling. Let out any sounds. And welcome again to this live stream. My name is Jonathan Foust. I'm a teacher with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington. I'm delighted to have this time with you. I understand we've got people from Florida, Illinois, Virginia Beach, Washington, D.C., London. Welcome. Really, really glad you're here. Two friends were talking about their meditation practice and having a discussion as to whether their practice was impacting their anxiety. And one of them said, it's been really helpful for me. I've got it down to two worries: every person on earth's opinion of me and the crushing psychological weight of being alive. There's no question right now that worry is in the air. It's part of the air that we're breathing. Concerns about COVID-19, about the economy. And chances are good you may know someone who is affected by the pandemic. And I offer my sincere wishes to you. I hope that you're safe. And all who are struggling right now, my deepest hope is that we all find peace and ease. Tonight, I'd like to talk about worry and the accompanying restlessness that comes with anxiety. I'd like to talk about the diagnosis of worry, the cause, the remedy, and the path to becoming more whole. Tonight's talk is really a continuance of the recent talks on the mind states that obscure clear seeing and an open heart. When things aren't going your way, the mind has a propensity to get lost in 5 essential states. One of them is anger, aversion, and ill will. One of them is craving and desire, worry and restlessness, sloth and torpor, and getting paralyzed by doubt and self-criticism. As I like to say, the good news is there are only 5. The bad news is that they're pretty pervasive. So a little bit about the diagnosis of worry, of what it means to kind of wake up to realize that this state of worry is present in your life. If I have a superpower, it's worry. I gestated in an amniotic sea of worry. My mother lost a child before me at childbirth, and she was subsequently quite anxious carrying me, so much to the point that her doctor, way back then, recorded relaxations for her on a reel-to-reel tape recorder. I always wondered if that early impact of being guided in the relaxation affected my my career teaching meditation. So I've had a pretty privileged life. I didn't lack for anything materially, but I think it's safe to say that I lived from this internal stance of expecting the worst and anticipating what could go wrong. And I know I'm not unique in that. Worry and restlessness come with this portable flesh unit that you are now inhabiting. It's your nervous system. In the jungle, if you stop and close your eyes, is a good chance you're going to be someone's lunch. So a certain amount of hypervigilance is a good thing. When you're afflicted with worry, the first thing is to realize it. And when you sense what it's like to be worried, to be caught in worry, if you like, let's just take a short little experiment just to close your eyes. And just to say that through these little guided inquiries that we'll be doing tonight, if it doesn't feel safe for you, if it feels too activating, you can just change your attention. You don't have to do these practices. Just find a way to kind of be with yourself. But if you close your eyes now and you just sense when you feel worried, when you feel that kind of anxiety and worry that's present, can you locate what it feels like on the inside? What does worry feel like? And you may sense it as a clench, maybe a tightness or a burning. Just take a moment just to sense how intimately and how precisely can you locate it. And if you like, you can open your eyes. What I find is that when I realize that I'm caught in this weather system of worry, for me, quite often it's a clench. It's kind of a clench, kind of in the solar plexus. And I can feel kind of a state of alarm, almost an armoring that occurs. It helps me with this first step of becoming aware of restlessness is your capacity to recognize it and name it. Quite often, worry is coupled with restlessness. And restlessness is an interesting word. Restlessness is the absence of rest or hypervigilance, kind of an inability to settle. So worry and restlessness, it's an interesting phenomena. And every coin has two sides, of course. On one side of the coin, worry and restlessness and hypervigilance keep you alive. When you're sitting around the fire with your tribe, you really want that ADD person who goes, "Hey, I just heard a twig snap. Is everyone here? Are we okay?" It's an important function. But on the other side of the coin, though, is being trapped by restlessness and worry, not being able to turn it off. And you may well know the hamster wheel of racing thoughts, the same issues over and over and over again without any resolution. So what's the source of chronic worry? And how can you change your relationship with this? This topic has been a long-term fascination for me because I get so easily caught in worry and I don't like it. So a little bit about kind of the cause or the source. As I was thinking about this, I was reminded of about maybe 10 years ago. I spent some time with a friend back from my ashram days who was attending a seminar on preparing for the collapse of human civilization as we know it. And he told me there's going to be a collapse, and now's the time to prepare. And he had quite an intensity about him. So now's the time to transfer all your wealth to things that will be valuable after society collapses. You need to buy property with other people and figure out your defenses. But then he went on, he said, but you've got to go low key because if you show you have wealth, you'll be targeted by roving gangs. You have to figure out your alliances now and make sure you're prepared and protected. And he went and on with more tips and tricks, which were fascinating on the one hand, but also like a little bit horrifying. And I found myself saying, so is all this strategy based on the premise that you're not going to die? And he looked at me kind of weird. And I said, well, you are going to die sometime, right? And he said, oh, yeah. And then his face relaxed. And he said, that's actually kind of comforting. I don't know if knowing you're going to die gives you any comfort, but it does point towards something. And what it points toward is this unconscious coalescing around three words: I, me, and mine. That sense, the essential clench that has to do with being alive, with survival, and knowing on some level that being alive in a body is temporary. And this points toward what gets in the way of clear seeing and a free heart. In this particular philosophy, there are three poisons that kind of occlude the mind. One of them is greed. There's just the wanting mind that's never satisfied. One is hatred, the aversive mind that is always pushing away or caught in anger, ill will. And the third is delusion or confusion. And delusion is really interesting because it's tied in here with worry. Delusion is believing something is true when it's not, or believing something isn't true when it is. In this era of fake news, we really have to ask ourselves, well, what is true? What do you know to be unshakably true? And this, of course, was what fueled the whole practice of the Buddha. What is true? What is real? And Buddhism points to three characteristics of reality. One characteristic of reality is impermanence. Anything that's born out of causes and conditions is subject to change. And when you explore this in your moment-to-moment awareness, you recognize everything is changing. Everything is mutable. Even things that look solid, if you look really, really closely, they're not so solid. That ties right into the next characteristic of reality, which is seeing into the nature of stress and suffering. Anything you hold on to the degree you cling to it, is going to result in some form of stress or dissatisfaction or suffering. So everything is changing, and your relationship to what is changing is what determines the degree to which you will feel stress or suffering or dissatisfaction. And this points toward the third characteristic of reality, which is going to be referred to as not self. Now, well, this is a little hard to grasp with the rational mind. One way to think of it is that when you look at who you are, one component of who you are is the product of causes and conditions. That includes your body, your thoughts, your emotions. All of those are changing. So what is beyond the body? And what is beyond the conditioning of your mind? I can't tell you what's beyond the body because I'm not dead yet. But I can say that when those three words are more porous, when I and me and mine get a little bit more open or they fall away, something very interesting arises. And I know you've had that experience. When the sense of I, me, and mine either drops away or becomes a little bit more open, a little more vaporous, something very interesting begins to arise. And so it's a false belief, a deluded belief that you are permanent. It's like, you're born and at some point you have a name and you recognize you've got a name and the whole thing starts. I'm separate. You look for more and more evidence that you're separate. You go through life investing in the idea that you're alone, believing you're a wave cut off from the ocean. And this whole notion is amplified with the fear of death. Ultimately, we know that all of this is changing, is going to fall away. And perhaps we'll move from being a wave once again to being the ocean itself, perhaps. But in the meantime, we tend to be caught in fear and worry and anxiety because of that false identification. And it points toward the possibility of taking a broader view of this life that we're living. This great poet once said, sometimes it's important to take the 3,000-year view. And when I think of that, this moment in time in the context of 3,000 years, something opens up. As a good friend said, humans have been on this earth for about 200,000 years. The viruses have been around for a long, long time, like around 1.5 billion years. Scientists don't know what year the viruses emerged exactly, but I understand they think it was on a Thursday. So, okay, everything is changing. What I hold on to is going to give me rope burn. And someday I'll remember that I'm more than a wave cut off from the ocean, but I'm actually the ocean itself. But right now, I'm freaking out. So how do you work in real time with worry and restlessness and anxiety? How do we work with it? So allow me to share a personal story of embarrassment. About 17 years ago, I was giving a keynote at a conference, and at this conference was a teacher I'd never heard of who went by the name of Tara Brach. She had just published her book, Radical Acceptance, and was on the road promoting it. And We made a wonderful connection, and to make a long story short, that blossomed into a torrid email romance, moved on to instant messaging, and eventually it turned into more. And about 8 months later, I was preparing to move down to Washington, D.C. to be with Tara. At that time, I was living in the Berkshire Mountains at the far western edge of Massachusetts. And then right at that time, someone sent me an article about a number of suitcase bombs, nuclear suitcase bombs that were missing, supposedly stolen from Chechnya, and were, according to this source, distributed in major cities around the planet. And of course, Washington, D.C. would be an obvious choice for a nuclear weapon. And I'm embarrassed to say, but I really went into a panic. Like, what am I doing? I'm moving from the mountains of New England to Washington, D.C., probably the highest value target out there. And I worried. And I worked it over and over again in my meditation practice. And I realized I wasn't really meditating on it. It was more like a high mental speed blender of hypervigilant hallucinations of everything that could go wrong. But as I sat with it over a period of time, it kind of hit me. And I realized this one question came up. What do I actually have control over? I had control as to whether I could move to DC or not. And in my heart of hearts, I was going. I had control over whether I'd be prepared or not. And this feels a little dumb, but at that time, I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have any job prospects, but I spent about $1,000 on preparedness materials. Everything we'd need to shelter in place for a while, including potassium iodide pills. And you know what? My worry and my anxiety level dropped dramatically. I actually landed in DC, and it's been a great ride. And I learned a lot from that incident. And in retrospect, I think about 90% of what I worry about is actually out of my control. The other 10% I can do something about. And taking action on that 10% of being prepared was really powerful. And recognizing what I didn't have control over and not worrying about it because of that created such a sense of ease. When fear is not named and it's not directly examined, it becomes a virus. It pops up here and there, but a lot of time below the line, it's spreading a kind of dis-ease and affecting your whole system. I'd like to tell you a little bit about a particular approach that as someone who's a professional worrier has been very, very helpful for me. And this is something from the author and cultural influencer, Tim Ferriss. He gave a great TED Talk entitled Why You Should Define Your Fears Instead of Your Goals. And I'll include the link in the notes for you. And Tim is a fascinating guy. He's brilliant, and he makes no secret about the personal struggles that he's gone through in his life. In his study on how to kind of work with himself, he was heavily influenced by the Stoics. And it's interesting, there's a lot of similarity between the Stoics and kind of Buddhist philosophy in that both are reality-based. And as a board certified worrier, I got so much out of his presentation, and I really encourage you to check it out if worry and fear is a big theme in your life. My apologies if I don't represent this message perfectly, but I'll tell you a little bit about how it works. And then I'll offer a little reflection I'll take you through. The first step is to name your fear. When there is anxiety, ask yourself, so what could happen? And naming it is quite powerful. And part of the reality-based approach, both the Stoics and in Buddhism, is it really could happen. If you name a fear, yeah, it might happen. So there are two questions that when you can name a fear is to ask yourself, first, what could you do to prevent this from happening? And then to ask yourself, what could you do to repair things if it does happen? These two questions are really simple, but they're really, really powerful. And I'd like to give you an example, and then I can guide you through a short little inquiry. A friend shared how terrified she was that her parents were going to catch COVID-19. They're they're older, her mother has a compromised immune system, and the idea of losing one or both of her parents was really unbearable, and she found herself just caught in dread. Again, this cycles of worried thoughts. And as we sat to talk about it, she named her fear, and naming can be helpful. It doesn't necessarily provide relief, but it does point toward a really powerful phrase, which is what you can't communicate controls you. Sometimes taking time to turn directly toward the worry or the fear and to name it is the beginning of moving into deeper investigation. And so I asked her, well, what could you do to prevent this from happening? What could you do to kind of protect your parents? Like, what are 5 things you could do, no matter how small? And she said, well, they just hate being cut off. They're complaining about how alone they feel. And she said, I really want them to recommit to staying in place. And she sat with it. She thought, I could teach them and their friends about technology and how to work these platforms of being connected. And I realized I've been worried about them getting Amazon shipments, and I can show them a protocol to make sure that they're safe in terms of not bringing boxes into the house. She thought about it a little bit more. She thought, I could schedule a time to FaceTime with them during the day so they knew that there would be a time when we would sit down. I know they love being with my kids, and I can get my kids to hang out with them and explain to them how important it is for their grandparents to have time with them. And we sat a little bit longer, and she said, I've always wanted to do oral history with them. I could spend some time interviewing them and record it. And as she began to speak, she began to get a little bit lighter. And of course, because this is a reality-based inquiry, it leads to the second question. What can you do to repair things if it does happen? She thought about that and she said, well, I need to make sure they have medical supplies in place. I've done I could do a better job at that. And I would be relieved if I knew they had that. I can make sure they have direct contact with their medical caregivers and make sure that if there's anything they need, that those channels are really opened up. And I could set up a support line with my siblings so we know we're going to have things covered in case they need extra support. As a result of that inquiry, she had a to-do list, and just looking closely at what she could do to prevent it, what she could do to repair it, she said it alleviated a lot of that clench kind of under the line, under the radar. So I'd like to offer you a little reflection to kind of give you a little bit of time to kind of sense if these questions might be helpful for you. And again, if this is challenging for you, if it feels too activating, you might just choose a concern or a worry that isn't quite so activating. But if you like, you can close your eyes and I'll be offering you these questions, and then you'll have just a minute or so to kind of reflect on your own. And actually, if you have a paper nearby, you could even explore that. So if you like, you can close your eyes, and with your eyes closed, you might now take 3 long and slow deep breaths. Inhale fully, and on the exhalation, just relax and let go. And you might bring into mind now something that you're worried about, something you find your mind kind of getting caught on. And I'll give you a little bit of time to kind of go through the files. And if you would, take some time to settle on one particular issue that seems to want some attention. And to bring this a little bit closer, you might sense, can you create a visual representation of this image that creates worry? And if it feels okay, if it feels safe, you might just sense, what does it feel like inside to sit with this particular issue? Can you locate that feeling inside just to look and let it know that you see it? And now with this next question, let yourself just free associate. Let any and every idea pop up. And the first question is, what could you do to prevent this from happening? Can you think of 5 things that you could do? Take the next minute. And moving on to the second question. If what you are worried about were to happen, what could you do to repair things? Or what could you do to be with this if it were to happen? Again, you might think, are there 5 things you could do if it were to happen? What would they be? And you might, again, take some deep breaths. Take 3 long and slow deep breaths. And just sense if anything may have shifted over these last few minutes of reflecting on these questions. I hope you found that helpful. It's been helpful for me, and there's more to this, but that's an important piece. I found for myself a lot of my worry has something to do with identifying the unmet need. Whatever it is I need or I'm wanting that's not happening. And just a little example, when I find myself worrying about traveling to some future event, I always kind of stew. I kind of feel unsettled. And I remember once asking myself, well, what do I need to feel more whole? What I needed was more information. How long does it take to get from the train to the airport? And what does a taxi actually cost? Those little things add up. They seem kind of petty, but naming them is the key. And when I can name them and I can sense what I need, it helps me to kind of calm and get a little more resourced. So worry is an essential part of the human condition. It's a wise part of you looking out for danger to ensure that you feel safe. But when it's out of control or when this mind state dominates, it completely obscures clear seeing. It's not good or bad, but it's how you're relating to it. And so as we've explored a little bit here, worry has something to do with forgetting who you are. First, thinking that you're a permanent being, and second, believing that your perception of how things should be is actually how things should be. And as they say, if you argue with reality, there's a good chance you're going to lose. So the release or the shifting of worry has something to do with letting go, which includes turning to face your worries directly and to look closely at what's real, what you know to be real. And these exercises we've done, such as naming and sensing what you can do to prevent or repair, they can be very, very helpful in specific situations, I found. They're kind of a go-to reflex I have now as I've learned how to work with my worried nature. But it opens up a bigger question. How can you cultivate a life that is less worried and less afflicted in general? Mark Twain famously said, I've lived through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened. We tend to live in this hallucination of all the things that could go wrong. And we are always trying to take care of ourselves. Worry points to an unmet need, something you're wanting, something you're hoping for, that's not happening. And turning to name that unmet need is part of shifting your relationship with worry. It takes you to a vulnerable place. And you can look at that unmet need through two windows or two wings of the practice. Mindfulness is made up of two wings. One is wisdom, to see it clearly. And that's part of the practice in meditation or in life, recognizing the state. As soon as you recognize, oh, this is worry, you've begun to sever your identification with it. And there's a world of difference between being worried and being with your worry. And when you recognize that your vision, your clear seeing is obscured by this weather system of worry, you can pause, you can name it. You can identify action steps to prevent or repair what might happen. You can look closely at and identify the unmet need. You can look closely at your attitude and see if something might shift there. Another wing, which is sometimes overlooked, is cultivating the heart's response to worry, which is calling on empathy, calling on kindness, calling on compassion, calling on loving presence. And in many ways, this is the lubrication that allows us to be with the intensity of that state. Quite often, it's so powerful, as Tara often says, is to bring your hand to your chest. There's something so powerful about that physical act of bringing your hand to your chest. And just to acknowledge that this is hard now. To sense how sorry you are for the suffering. And to sense what it's like to hold it in some kind of loving presence. I remember being completely racked with a migraine. Really, really intense pain. And I found myself in the midst of kind of brain fog and pain, trying to figure out what I did or what I didn't do that resulted in this incredible locked up unpleasantness and anxiety. I've worked with chronic migraines my whole life, and I know a lot of techniques for managing pain by how I pay attention to it. And none of them were working. And so it occurred to me I could call on another strategy, which is this strategy of calling on loving presence, which is something I had to learn how to do. Calling on kindness, empathy, compassion. And as I practiced this, actually I didn't bring my hand to my heart. I kind of brought it to the back of my head where I always feel the pain. And I just sensed, what if I just called on loving presence, whatever that means? What if I offer kindness and compassion to this? And that became my practice. And as I did, this phrase just popped right up. And the phrase was, other people feel this too. And I felt a shift. As I thought of the thousands of people on the planet who are probably right at that moment having a migraine as well, the frame opened up. The pain didn't go away, but it was held in this large, large space. We're going to close our session with a little reflection on kindness, but I want to say just a few things before we close. Some ways to work with worry. The first, again, is just to name it. As soon as you name it, you begin to take its power away. You've shifted from being fully identified with it to the possibility of being with it. It's helpful to understand that worry doesn't solve anything. It's simply a hamster wheel of turning thoughts. It can be helpful to take that broader view, taking the 3,000-year view. For me, is just a way to kind of, again, open the frame of something I'm taking very, very personally. It can be helpful to look at what you're actually in control of. What do you actually have control of? Consider what you are most afraid of, what you're most worried about, and take some time to sense what you could actually do to prevent it, what you could actually do to repair it if it were to happen. And those classic words from Reinhold Niebuhr: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Another antidote to working with worry is to focus on the present. Come back to the breath. In this moment, I'm aware of breathing in as I breathe in. I'm aware of breathing out as I breathe out. In this moment, I'm safe. Calling on compassion. Thich Nhat Hanh spoke beautifully about the atrocities that occurred to the boat people in Vietnam, storms and pirates. And he spoke beautifully how if in the boat one person would remain calm, the boat would remain calm. How can you call on compassion and presence to be the calm one in your boat? The other thing you can do, which is so powerful, is to reach out and help others. Is there someone that you know who might benefit from a phone call from you to check in? Is there someone who lives near you who might want to know that you're thinking of them? This can be a profound way for us to break out of our small, confined story, to reach out to other waves on the ocean and feel our connectedness. So we'll close with a short meditation and a short reading. If you like, you can close your eyes. And you might, again, in your own way, take 3 long and slow, deep breaths. And you might just, in your own way, open your attention to what you are carrying inside in regard to these challenging times. Acknowledging how worry has a quality of wisdom, looking out for your safety. If you like, you might bring your hand to your heart. And if you like, you might let your sense of your experience of these challenging times expand to all those around this planet who are also perhaps struggling, worried, and fear. And in your own way, you might imagine that all of this could be held in some kind of loving presence, calling on kindness, empathy, compassion. And as you breathe, Imagine if you could breathe in, if not some sense of loving presence, or just the willingness to feel it. May this be held in kindness and empathy. May all beings feel safe from inner and outer harm. May all beings feel peace. May all beings feel free from stress and suffering. And we'll close with these words from Mary Oliver. And this poem is entitled, I Worried. I worried a lot. Will the garden grow? Will the rivers flow in the right direction? Will the earth turn as it was taught? And if not, how shall I correct it? Was I right? Was I wrong? Will I be forgiven? Can I do better? Will I ever be able to sing? Even the sparrows can do it, and I am, well, hopeless. Is my eyesight fading, or am I just imagining it? Am I going to get rheumatism, lockjaw, dementia? Finally, I saw that worrying had come to nothing and gave it up and took my old body and went out into the morning and sang. In these final moments, you might bring into mind if there's one person who comes to mind who may be struggling. And in your own way, you might wish them ease and wish them well. Letting that broaden out to all beings, including yourself. As you're ready, you can deepen your breath. As you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Traditionally, at our class in Arlington, at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington, we have tea and cookies. You'll have to find your own cookies, but I hope they are soothing, and I wish you well. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.